I thought there for a moment I was going to be in at 7 o'clock and actually start on time, but it is 7:01, so I can't disappoint anyone. Derrick, Chiefs Digest here. I am glad to see that Jackson is doing his cardio, getting ready for the pod, getting ready for tonight's Q&A. And yes, our burner account, Justin, has reported for duty. Haven't seen Brandon yet. Checking to make sure what time I show up, but it is good to have those of you who are here with us so far. Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41 should be joining us a little later. I haven't talked to Nick today, so I have not gotten the scoop on what time his grocery shopping was going to be taking place. I don't know if it was before or after the Q&A, so we will all find out together when Nick shows up about his grocery shopping plans for this week. I don't really have a whole lot. I mean, I know it usually takes a little bit of time to get the questions in, but I might just address a couple of things just quick off. Probably, I guess, on the potential suspension fronts more than anything else. Obviously, there were some developments today in the Rashid Rice situation with the reports, multiple reports now, that the alleged victim in the incident outside the nightclub down in Dallas, has signed a non-prosecution statement affidavit with the police, which would be an indication that he does not want charges to be filed. I know it kind of was reported in one area. They first kind of broke the story that charges were being dropped. Well, no charges had been filed officially as of yet. So this is still a weird story with a lot of confusing elements to it that we are still trying to figure all out. But the fact that the alleged victim in this case, has signed a non-prosecution agreement is great news for Rashid Rice. I mean, it's the WFAA in Dallas says that the police are continuing to investigate the incident, but at this point, it certainly doesn't sound like that there are going to be any charges stemming from it for Rashid Rice, unless there is another weird twist or development in this. So at that point, what Roger Goodell will do as far as discipline will largely depend on the outcome of the situation with the vehicle accident, which obviously Rashid is still facing 8 felony counts in that investigation and that potential prosecution. We'll see how long that takes to play out. I still do not expect the NFL to dish out its suspension until after that criminal case is closed. So if it happens after the season, I would not expect Rashid Rice to be penalized until 2025. Now, the length of that suspension could still be affected by the incident with the nightclub. I mean, to a certain degree, Roger Goodell is not limited to legal proceedings. I mean, he can absolutely, as commissioner, has some leeway with taking some justice in his own hands per se, and dishing out a suspension, not necessarily, in accordance with what happens in the legal cases. So what that means is, and the NFL does give him the power also to take in past consideration of events. So if the NFL were to believe that there's anything in college that happened involving Rashid Rice that they believe influenced, it is certainly a part of the behavior that's involved in the traffic accident. If they believe that there was something involved with this photographer that can be folded into that suspension, I mean, it absolutely can influence his decision on that. I mean, this isn't a court of law with Roger Goodell. He largely has a lot of leeway. Obviously, if any suspension comes out, Rashid Rice can appeal it and can appeal some of the justifications that Roger Goodell came to. But there were some reports that the Chiefs were bracing for an 8-game suspension before the nightclub incident. I never got that. I mean, from the Chiefs, they were expecting, and maybe they may be preparing for the worst, might be the way the best phrase that. I guess it was how it was originally reported. But a 6-game suspension to me originally seemed more plausible. A longer suspension, given that Rashid Rice now has had a couple of incidences that have been at least alleged. And like I said, they're alleged is something that Roger Goodell can actually take into consideration in the way he dishes out suspension. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm still thinking it's more likely that 2025 is when Rashid Rice faces that. but it will largely be just when the judicial process completed involving the auto accident in March. So if that happens during the season, you could absolutely still see a suspension for Rashid Rice in season. So let's see what happens. In the other incident involving Wanya Morris and Wanya Morris and True Godrick, who were arrested last week in Johnson County on marijuana charges. There's a couple of conflicting things and obviously issues with this and things that make it challenging. I mean, one obviously is that, yes, I mean, if they had been doing it a little bit further away in Missouri, they would not have been arrested. So there's obviously some discrepancies in laws that either the players just weren't paying attention to, a team didn't really prepare them for, or some combination thereof. The other thing is that while the NFL has largely dropped discipline for marijuana and have completely dropped it for the most part, involving positive marijuana testing, there's no suspensions that come with positive marijuana testing. But the only thing that the NFL does is tell the players, don't use marijuana anymore, be smarter about it. I think they have a counseling course that they'll have players go through if they test positive, but there's no suspension. There can be a suspension involving marijuana arrest, but it's only usually in conjunction with if there is something else involved with the arrest. And so I had a league source tell me that only if there were extenuating circumstances in the arrest, that there are other charges, or there's an excessive amount of marijuana, showing maybe the intention of distribution, which we don't have any evidence of as far as the charges in the documents that have been uncovered so far. In those cases, it's usually a fine that the NFL dishes out. So I'd be very surprised if Morris or Godrick faced a suspension for the arrest. True Godrick is an international player, so I think he probably has some other issues potentially involving the arrest and might deal with his work status, but I don't have anything specific on that yet. Hopefully it doesn't affect that and he continue to be a part of the Chiefs. Both players, as I understand, are taking part in OTAs, and they're with the team right now. So no issues there. But like I said, I don't think that there's going to be a penalty for either one of those players as far as the suspension goes. The NFL at this point pretty much just chalks it up to a suspension for a marijuana arrest. And if, like I said, only if there's any extenuating circumstances with the arrest, that there was another crime involved, or like I said, it was an excessive amount of marijuana, there was some other incident related to the arrest, then that might lead to a suspension. But it sounds like to me, from what we've heard so far and what the team expects, that there won't be anything long-term for either one of those players. So I know we got some questions built up now, so if you have any more about those two situations, I'd be glad to answer them. But I think that we've kind of dismissed with it for the most part. So unless there's an angle we haven't brought up, I probably won't bring those two, discuss them again. But hey, as always, it's what you guys want to talk about. And Des, one of our good members, with the first question, did Worthy report? Why hasn't he been signed yet? Yeah, normally with players, and Xavier Worthy is the last player who has not signed his rookie deal to this point. Kingsley Suamadiya signed his deal on Monday, and that is now done, turned into the league, got approved on Tuesday. So that means Xavier Worthy is the last draft pick that remains unsigned, and that is not uncommon. I mean, it's very common for first-round picks to take a little bit longer. I have not looked at the list recently, but my impression is that probably most of the first round picks have not signed yet. I haven't looked at the breakdown yet to see, so I don't know how Worthy really stands out there, but it's not uncommon. What players normally do and rookies do, there's a kind of interim agreement that they can sign that at least guarantees them their money if anything were to happen injury wise. So, there's a kind of legal protection for rookies in those situations. So yeah, my understanding is that he is at OTAs and is working out. Rookies who haven't signed their contract, they're not prohibited from working in these situations. So it's not a holdout situation at this point, nothing of that nature. And I've got no indication that it's going to go that way. Normally these deals, even though there's a slotting system and there's not much wiggle room, Sometimes there is wiggle room as far as the guaranteed money goes. It's not maybe the total money, but how much the guarantee is. Offset languages, which is like if a player it doesn't pan out, is there any money that the team can recoup down the road if they, if they get released for off the field issues? I mean, there's a lot of little things in a contract that can be, negotiated. Sometimes there's big things that can be negotiated. The amount of money is not usually the issue. Usually it just comes down to the guarantee and when money's going to get paid. And sometimes with rookies, it is guaranteed money because, that's even though the money itself is pretty much slotted, how much is guaranteed is not slotted. So it usually falls in line as far as the players, higher round picks getting higher in the first round picks getting more of their money guaranteed and so on down the line. And a lot of times it just, takes time before everything kind of gets together and, players kind of start falling in line. And once a couple of players get signed and the players around them get signed. So that's what I would expect is just at this point, it's not, especially for first round draft picks, it is not unheard of to not be signed at this point. No issues as far as it being a holdout situation. So I'm expecting to see Worthy out there tomorrow. Unless there's an injury of some sort. But my understanding is that, yes, he is reported with the team and is practicing. So I don't think that we have to worry about anything long-term there yet either. Casey Harold, another one of our great members. I'm glad Pizza Beer and Talking Chiefs. That sounds like a lot of fun. So if there's more of you out there doing that, hey, share along with us. I think that's great. So appreciate everybody joining us as usual. Like I said, Nick will be here in a little bit and you won't have to just, listen to me blathering on. Dr. Ozzy. Hey, Matt, we saw videos for some of the people arriving today. Do you have any insight as to the bigger names vets that did not report today? Not yet. And, we'll get some indication of that on Wednesday. I think really the only big question for me is just going to be how much of Travis Kelce will we see? My understanding is that Patrick Mahomes might miss a practice or two because of some personal commitments. That is generally happens. I think it was could have been 2 years in a row actually, but I know one point in the last couple of years, Kelce and Mahomes had a golf tournament in Hawaii that they were committed to. So they missed, I think, a day of practice for that. It's not uncommon, but frankly, the Chiefs were absolutely fine with Mahomes missing a day or two of practice because it means that Carson Wentz is going to get a lot of first-team reps on those days. So no issue there. And honestly, when I talked with someone in the front office about the possibility that Travis Kelce might miss some time, the answer there was that just means more reps for Jared Wiley. So they were okay with that too. So even though I think there's definitely some benefit about the more time that a rookie like Wiley has around Travis Kelce and Irv Cross too, being around and can, learn from Travis and watch him. There's definitely a huge benefit of that, of having Travis as a leader and a teacher on the field. At the same time, it just means more reps and more snaps for other guys, especially now during installs. Travis can pick all this up in a book. He can pick it up in about 2 seconds. He can pick it up on his tablet, so it's no big deal. I think it's much more beneficial to the Chiefs to be able to get those reps handed off to some other guys right now. So no big one there. There might be, and remember, these OTAs, this 10 practice period is voluntary. So and it's different than even it was, I think, 10 years ago. Even 10 years ago, it was voluntary. But there was at times an expectation, even if Andy Reid would get really annoyed with questions about who was there and who wasn't there. It's less like that now. I mean, honestly, hey, if veterans miss a one of the day or two of these workouts, nobody seems to care. I mean, they really don't. It's a bigger deal if younger players aren't there and guys who are, maybe doing it for contractual reasons. If you're doing it for personal reasons, you've got a commitment off the field, your wife's having a baby, your kid has to go to the dentist. I mean, there's no big one there. It's more about the other ones that I think that around the league get more attention and more publicity. But even then, I mean, it's voluntary, so nobody seems to care. The only thing that really comes into insight is when it relates to your bonuses and workout bonuses. And if I remember correctly, you only have to participate in 70% of the workouts for the most part. It's either 70 or 80% in order to earn a workout bonus. So even if you miss a workout or two, miss an OTA or two, it's not going to affect that bonus. So We'll see. But my expectation was, obviously, you saw the video of Patrick and some of the other players reporting. I didn't see Travis in any of those. Doesn't mean he's not there. Doesn't mean he won't be there. But that's the only other player that I expected to probably miss some times. I do think that we'll probably be there next week. We will see, but I do expect Travis there for at least a little bit of it, if not the. I don't think it'll be the entire time, but maybe he'll surprise us and show up for it. I don't know. Dr. Ozzy with the second question. What are you watching for when you're at the media portion of OTAs tomorrow? How much can you actually learn from t-shirt and shorts practices? That's a great question. Because honestly, the first OTA practice for me is really about checking. It's about a lot of things, but the first thing I'm checking off and looking for are the injured players coming back from next year. What's their status? Are they practicing? Are they working out on the side? Are there nowhere to be found? That tells you a little bit about where they are, at least in their development. So for instance, Joe Tooney, who had surgery for that pectoral injury, I don't expect to see him practicing. I mean, the expectation is that he was not going to be available for any of the OTAs and the mini camp that he was targeting. His return was targeted for the beginning of training camp. So Joe Tooney, at this point in his recovery, I wouldn't be surprised if he was out there on the field watching. Obviously, it's voluntary, so if he wanted to just continue to rest and doesn't want to be standing on the sideline watching practice for a couple hours, wouldn't begrudge him at all. I don't think anybody would. He's a veteran, 33 years old. Hey, he can skip some of these things. But if he's out there watching, that's a pretty good indication that he's close. If a guy is going through some drills, like Brian Cook is coming back, I'm expecting to see Brian Cook out there. I wouldn't be surprised if he went through some drills, if he just individual drills, no team drills. The expectation was they probably wasn't going to be cleared for team activities until maybe training camp, maybe the June mini camp, the mandatory mini camp in June, maybe for team activities, but that was going to be kind of borderline. But for Brian Cook, if I see him just out there, that's expectations. If he's going through any drills, he's ahead of course. He's ahead of the progress. So that's would be a really good sign. I wouldn't expect to see Charles Minihue at all. Now, he might be out there on the field. He might be there watching, on the sidelines, wearing a hat and just keeping an eye on things and listening to the instruction as the defense is going through installs. There's things to be picked up on the field. So he could be out there, but with Charles, where he's at as far as his recovery and his timeline goes, it wouldn't surprise me if he was getting therapy, if he's working out with the trainers inside. So injured players, one for sure. It's a passing camp. So most of the eyes are going to be on the quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, defensive backs, a little bit of the linebackers and coverage. I mean, 7-on-7 is a big thing in these camps. The team periods are nice, but that's really hard for the linemen because there's no pads, there's no context, there's not much they can do. All you can really see is who's got some good footwork and who doesn't. That will be a little critical, especially when you're watching some rookies and younger players like Suamadia and Wanye at left tackle. That will be important to watch. But it's a passing camp, so you want to see who can stand out. I mean, there's no contact, so you're not going to learn a ton, but you're going to learn a few things. So, who do you see standing out? Who's impressing you? Who's faster than whom else? I mean, you can tell a few things, during these OTAs. I mean, they can be predictive. I mean, last year, Najee Johnson just absolutely blew the doors off everybody during OTAs. He looked fantastic. And was that predictive when we got to camp? Yeah, because he backed it up to camp before that injury. Najee is kind of fitting in both those categories. He's an injured player that I want to watch, but he's a player now. You're hoping that he's going to be cleared and ready. If he's going through 11-on-11s, I want to see where he's at. If he's showing the same kind of performance he had last year at this time. I think that's always going to be a tough challenge because the first year back from an ACL injury, any surgery, especially with knees and legs, those are really hard. It's usually the second year until you really start feeling comfortable. So, but getting an idea about where Najee Johnson is really important. You want to see the rookies and just, how comfortable they are. If there's any, there's not usually stage fright at this point, but you want to see if they can keep up with the speed. You want to see a progression. It used to be a lot easier in that sense when we got to see all 10 practices. Now that we're limited to just 1 out of 3, essentially, and we only get to see 3 of these practices, seeing the progression's a little bit harder. But you can at least get a little bit of a glimpse. But you have to remember you're only getting a slice. You might see a guy on a really good day or a really bad day. Maybe he has 3 great days, and they're all in the days the media are there. Maybe he has 6 great days, and none of them are when the media are there. That's just par for the course. So those are the main things I'm looking for, Dr. Ozzie. I mean, it's like I said, it's a passing camp, so that's what you're really watching: are the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs. You want to see how they're doing, but you can glean a lot of other things from other positions. I mean, even with the linemen, like I said, you can tell hands, you can tell speed, you can tell whether people are knowing their assignments, whether they're picking up the playbook or not. And it's an opportunity for the guys. To me, it's different. I mean, this is the first time that the players are going any faster than a walk-through speed. So it's not 100% game speed, maybe it's 70-80%, but you get a little bit of a glimpse there. You get, it's the veterans who are going to be around and know they're going to be on the team. They're going to give you more of the 70-80% speed. Hey, the young guys who are competing for jobs, you kind of want to see them going a little bit harder and going a little bit faster. I joke, I mean, Demarcus Robinson might be the best player I've ever seen during OTAs. He was the MVP of OTAs like 4 years in a row. Still, hey, he had some decent moments on the field as regular season. That's no knock against DeMarcus, but it's just that's the time of year when players like that should thrive. So if you are a receiver and you're not impressing me during OTAs when nobody can touch you and you're in shorts, that's a problem. You should look like Jerry Rice out there. I mean, not be too, hyperbolic, but you should be impressing me right now when there isn't anybody hitting you. If you are having drops and you're having problems right now, it's not going to get better when the pads come on. So I know Nick's going to be in here in a minute. As soon as he gives me the thumbs up, I never want to bring in Nick, ahead of schedule or anything. So, but he's giving me the thumbs up. So,
oh boy,
I could not be more excited. Nick.
Hello, okay. Matt. How are you on this fine Tuesday?
I am fantastic. Nick, how about yourself?
I can't complain. I mean, I'm here at a decent time. There we go.
You can absolutely complain. I think everybody enjoys that when we complain. I mean, that's sometimes the best part of the shows.
Yeah, I don't enjoy the complaints in the comment section sometimes.
Well,
so,
it's only our complaints I'm talking about. Our rants. I mean, our rants are usually the best parts.
Well, you gotta get me agitated enough for that one. Good luck to you on that.
Oh, I think we can do it. I mean, I know there's at least 4 or 5 questions that we can do that. So
I wish you the best.
Any thoughts on your mind as we're getting ready we'll be out to OTAs tomorrow? So anything on the top of your mind? I was just Dr. Ozzie's question just now was about what we can learn from watching guys in t-shirts and shorts practices. How about you? Because you always have a very alert eye during OTAs.
Whatever do you mean? I'm just observing.
You observe everything. You have an eye for finer details than I do. So
well,
I always appreciate it about you.
We all have our strengths and our strengths. So there are no weaknesses, just things we can improve upon.
I definitely have some of those.
All right. Well, but look, I mean, like you said earlier, it's equivalent of it's equivalent of 7-on-7. Yes, there's going to be O-line. Yes, there's going to be D-line. Everybody's going to say, "Hey, how's Felix looking against the run?" Don't know. He's not in pads. But I mean, like you can watch linebackers drop, so you can see how the corners do, how they turn. Do they quarter turn fine? How do they stay with the receiver? How do they do in trail? Do they feel comfortable? Do they get grabby on the jersey? And just how well do they track the ball? How well do the receivers do? How well are the corners anticipating when they open up their hips and let the guy on a slant route? How do they drive on that? Just all that type of stuff. And so right now, the biggest thing is seeing how the rookies handle being around professionals. That's kind of the one thing you can guarantee every year of watching the OTAs is how do the rookies handle when they're going against the Justin Reeds and the Trent McDuffies of the world versus when they were at rookie camp just a couple weeks ago. And how does Xavier Worthy build off what he did in day 2, day 3 of rookie camp, because he did have some drops, obviously, in day one because the jitters and everything. We got rid of those. Now that you bring in the veterans, how does each one of those rookies do now that they're around the veterans of the world? If Patrick Mahomes is in the huddle, how does Worthy do, with that during an OTA practice? Not doesn't mean he didn't work out with them in Texas and kind of already eliminate all that, but some guys, do they get starstruck? Do they, wow, I'm here right now and this is the Super Bowl champions. I'm on this team, and all that type of stuff, and let that get in their head. So, I mean, it's just all those little nuances and things you find out from early on here.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely can learn things, and you can. Sometimes it's what maybe sometimes the negatives that you can learn about a player because, like I said, I mean, it's a passing camp. So if you are a receiver and you can't thrive during a passing camp, you're certainly not going to thrive when the pads come on. So defensive backs, it's another opportunity too. I mean, you can't necessarily tell who is going to stand out. We've seen some guys once the pads come on shrink away, but you can make a case for yourself this time of year, certainly at the right positions. So this one, James, we can't really answer this one question really because we haven't got a chance. Tomorrow's going to be our first day out there as far as, figuring out how the wide receiver looks on OTAs. So give us a little time. Come back next week. We can give you an answer next week based on what we see tomorrow, but it's a little too early. But Jackson, maybe we can tweak this a little bit because, saying our favorite player to watch during OTA since we haven't got to see it yet, Jackson, but questions to you, Nick, is who are you looking forward to watching tomorrow and getting your eyes on?
I just want to see what Worthy does. I want to see what Jared Wiley does. I want to see how Brian Cook looks, how he moves around, if he's out on the field. And then I'll find people along the way that make plays when they do team. And then I'll be like, oh, I like that. I want to see more of that. So it all is a spur of the moment for the most part. So, I mean, I'm not really I'm not watching one specific guy every single play, and I'm not going to be watching a lot of O-line, D-line, despite how many questions we'll get about how do the O-line, D-line look without pads on. Because here's the thing, in O-line, D-line, all comes down to can you drive the steering wheel? Can you grab the pads and can you lift them up to where they can't do anything, and can you drive them around? If you can do that, then you're going to have a good offensive lineman career. If you can't, you're going to be wide and outside, grabbing a hold of shoulder pads on the outside, just like that, and it's not going to work out well for you. So until the shoulder pads come on, O-line, D-line really doesn't mean anything.
It does not. And, this kind of relates to a conversation I had with one of our colleagues during rookie minicamp, which is that one of the things I hate to see it because I think it's a missed opportunity. But one thing is that you don't see it during 7-on-7, but certainly during team drill periods at this time of year is the quarterback throwing the football away or taking a sack or scrambling. I mean, you don't normally see a lot of sacks called in these periods. Sometimes, if somebody let a whistle get blown just because they want to play to end, they don't want to be getting hurt or anything. But a scramble during a practice this time of year to me is just an opportunity missed. Because it's an opportunity for you to do what Mahomes did and what Andy Reid talked about of just checking your windows, see what you can get away with, find out now because you don't want to find out during a game what you can get away with, but you can find out during practice. I get it though. I know why guys don't do that, why they don't force the ball more and that they do sometimes scramble because you don't want to break a good habit. You don't want to be forcing the ball necessarily, and then that turns into who you are. And then during a game, instead of scrambling when you should, you decide to make an ill-advised pass. I mean, I get wanting to stay and making good decisions and habits, but at the same time, I'm like, it still drives me crazy. I mean, and Mahomes does it too, so I understand it. Although Mahomes does a lot less than some other guys do, because I think he sees the value of that, of figuring out what he can and can't do. And the last thing in the world that bothers him is an interception in May, because nobody's keeping track of those except you, me, and about 6 other people.
I'm not keeping track because I don't care.
You're not keeping track because you don't care.
I don't even care in training camp. No, what I will say is that what bugged me at rookie camp when you and I were out there and I kept getting annoyed by was the two guys that are there getting throws in, trying to show their worth and try to make a roster and everything when they kept taking off and scrambling. It was just a waste of the receivers running around. It was a waste of the guys dropping into coverage. Like, put it somewhere. And the reason they don't is because they're still going mentally back to what their college coaches told them about taking the check down or taking off scrambling. They're still in that college mentality. And I'm going to be honest with you, that eliminates them pretty quickly. After, if I was in the Chiefs coaching shoes after I see it for a second or third time, if I was even thinking about you, I'm not anymore, because you're showing me you don't have that competitive fire that you need to be on a Super Bowl champion. So, like, because I know way back in the day, I know at Central Missouri, a long time ago, when Willie Fritz was the coach there, who is now at Houston, I believe, and was at Tulane before, Willie's coaching staff would reward guys for taking the check down. Even if there was something that was better 10, 15, 20 yards downfield, they would reward the quarterback for taking the check down or taking the scramble, taking the check down, taking the scramble. So whenever you get that ingrained in you over 3 to 4 years in college, you think that's what you should do every play and not take the risk, But like you said, if Andy Reid's giving you the green light to say, hey, let loose, this is a practice, this is what you're supposed to try to do if you're trying to make a roster, then go do it. So there's nothing that annoys me more than whenever they throw it away, or because you can do that in a game. You know how to do that in a game. You're a professional. But I mean, in this moment, let your teammates get reps, let them get work, and don't waste their work.
Yeah, and the only time I really think I see Mahomes ever throw a ball away during a practice might be during a red zone period. I mean, that's about it. But for the most part, I mean, he from day one. I mean, and I think Andy Reid obviously did a good job of drilling that into him from day one. Is to say, practice is practice. Learn what you can get away with. I mean, it's fine if you make mistakes. I don't think Andy Reid gave one lick about Mahomes throwing an interception when he was a rookie, and the story out of training camp was, oh, Mahomes throws an interception like every single day. They don't care because like you said, I mean, it's about figuring out what you can and can't do on a football field, and nobody learns anything during a practice, to me, from a wasted play, and that's what a scramble or a throwaway is for the most part. Let's roll with an interesting question for me, because we've talked about this maybe a little bit, but from this perspective, Nick, which position group do you think is the weakest on this team right now?
I mean, if you had to, you're gonna wait and see when the pads come on. We'll see if it's at running back, or we'll see if it's at defensive line, or where the receivers are at. But I mean, those are going to be your three within the ballpark of keeping an eye on whenever training camp actually arrives, about where they are or not at that point.
Yeah, I mean, my gut would say running back, simply because you might be an injury away from that group being fairly challenged.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more. I mean, it could very well be that there's a couple of great running backs in that room, and we're going to find out about it. That's the way running backs can be. Sometimes guys just don't show it until they get their chance. I mean, maybe there's a 1,000-yard back backing up Isaiah Pacheco, and we just don't know it yet. But that does feel like a group. I mean, because that to me is the really question here is which. Maybe this is the better way of putting it, is that which group lacks the most depth? Because I don't think there's a group on this team that really is weak. I mean, there's good spots at every position. I mean, the linebacker group has a lot of numbers. I'm not sure if it's terribly deep. You mentioned defensive line, though. That's the one area that I've got the most concerns about, because it's specifically, I mean, both positions for sure, but edge rusher in particular, that's another group where I feel like that they're one injury away from maybe really being challenged a little bit. But that's at least a position where I think you can go out and get a veteran this time of year to help you. That's not true in a lot of other positions.
Concur, Matt. Concur.
All right, this is before we've seen everything now, Nick. So this is pretty much just a blind take. I mean, your mileage may vary, Nick, and especially after we get some reps here in the next couple of weeks. But Kingsley Suamadia or Wanya Morris at left tackle, who you got?
I don't have either of them right now. They haven't proven anything to me. So I'm gonna put that as plain and simple as possible. Wanya out there, look, yeah, he has a little run blocking ability that he showed in games. He struggled mightily in pass protection and in pass blocking. Yeah, he's got the mentality you want, but he's got a long way to go in terms of getting his strength up to an NFL par. I personally think he's more of a right tackle long term than he is left tackle. So, I mean, we'll see what ends up happening with this down the road. Kingsley's very raw. We'll see what happens whenever training camp rolls around and shoulder pads and how that goes. Again, offense, defensive line, it does not matter until end of July. I don't know if that rhymes, but that is what you need to know. So asking us over and over again, that's fine. But I'm going to give you the same answer every time until the pads come on at the end of July. It's all just a waste of time.
True that usually jobs are not won or lost this time of year. I mean, there's the last time that I really remember any change on the offensive line depth chart during this time of year was injury related, because if I'm not mistaken, what it was Long that started at right guard when he signed as a free agent, and that was the same year that was Trey Smith's rookie year. He got hurt. Trey Smith was pushing him already, but Trey Smith took over after the injury and, took the job. I mean, I don't know who's going to be lined up at left tackle right now. I mean, knowing the Chiefs and their penchant for veterans, I mean, it could be Lucas Niang taking left tackle spots and Wanye Morris and Kingsley, swapping in behind them. It could be those two taking first left tackle spots every other day. I mean, they could be absolutely sharing that position. We might not even get the full picture on Wednesday, because the picture we get tomorrow might be different than the picture we get next week. I mean, Casey Chiefs, I'm with Nick. I mean, I can't tell you who's going to be the starting left tackle in week 1. It could change a couple of times between now and then, and it could be door number 3. Who knows? So it could be a lot that changes between now and then. Michael, do you anticipate Kadarius Toney or Justin Ross showing enough to become trade bait post preseason? I mean, Nick, Amir Smith, Marset was trade bait last year. Chiefs got a 7th round draft pick for him when it looked like there was just no room in the wide receiver group for him. I don't know. I mean, that's about I mean, that to me would be your expectation, that if you've got a receiver in this room that you don't think is going to make your team, can you get a 7th round draft pick for them? Kadarius Toney, yes, maybe. If he, has a good camp and he's healthy and you don't think there's room for him on your wrong room. Justin Ross, no, I think if I'm in their team, I probably just wait for the Chiefs to release him. I mean, this is a player who's an undrafted player. So, it's not like Amir Smith Marset was a drafted player. So I don't think that that's value to me. But even though the Chiefs didn't draft him, somebody did. And I don't know. I just can't see either one of those being in a situation where, one, if Kadarius Toney is good enough to get you a draft pick, you're going to hold on to him. If Justin Ross is good enough to get you a draft pick, you're probably going to hold on to him too. But I just don't know that he can show enough to give another team, convince them to give up a pick for him. Am I crazy?
I mean, first thing is they got to stay healthy. So let's jump that hurdle first. Let's get through that hypothetical hurdle first, where can they stay healthy during training camp? Kadarius Toney was a big no after one whole day of catching a couple punts, and then we didn't see him again until the Lions game. So I mean, that's his first hurdle, is staying healthy, and so we'll start there. Let's worry about that one first. And with Justin Ross is a guy that, I mean, yeah, the Chiefs medically cleared him to put him on the roster, but there's probably a lot of teams out there that never medically cleared him and weren't comfortable being able to, put him out there with what he had dealt with spine-wise, to where, like, hypothetically, if he takes a hit, you're never definitively 100% sure that, he's going to play football. I know that was a concern for a lot of teams coming out. So, I mean, sure, you can showcase them in preseason if they stay healthy. And then you can try to see if you can get a 6th or 7th round pick. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you're, if you're banking on trying to get a draft pick for either one of those guys, then I think you're asking a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, if Kadarius Toney's playing well enough to get you a draft pick, that means he's healthy enough to play for you. And I can't imagine the Chiefs, doing anything with him. It's all about upside. And I don't know, maybe Justin Ross would fit into that camp. I mean, I think that's about the most you could possibly get, would be a 7th round pick. And again, if he's good enough for that, I think I'd probably hold on to him. I mean, that was a little bit different than like last year, where it was pretty clear that, hey, Amir Smith Marset was good enough to make the team. Maybe he should have made the team. And I think the Chiefs were kind of fortunate to find the right situation. But, it wasn't like a earth-shattering move for either team. However, Bert's asking kind of the other side of this. And I'm gonna kind of combine your two questions here because I think this was the direction you were going about the Chiefs trading a first round pick in 2025 for DK Metcalf. And I've seen this talked about a lot, Nick, in the last few days on Chiefs verse.
Where's this coming from? It's all over the comment section, and where is this in the real? Is this in the real world, or is this in make believe right now, Matt?
I am fairly convinced that it's in make believe world. I don't believe it's based on anybody saying that the Seattle is going to trade DK Metcalf. I think it's based on some people saying, wouldn't it be nice if, since Seattle has a salary cap problem, that the Chiefs helped them out by taking DK Metcalf off their hands?
Where do you want me to start on this one? Do you want me to unleash? Do you want me to rant, or what do you want me to do?
Oh, we need a rant, so I'm not gonna preempt that. Go for the rant.
Okay, fine. Look, why would the Seattle Seahawks get rid of their premium wide receiver at the age of 26, just a couple months before the season starts, and the new head coach has just taken over and is trying to build his culture? Why would they do that? If they do that, it's for one of two reasons. Either they don't like what they're going to be able to do salary cap wise down the road, which I doubt is going to happen because he's still a premium receiver and they got to develop their quarterbacks that they have on there, and they would like to win. Mike McDonald would probably like to win in his first year there. DK Metcalf helps make that happen. And then on top of that, what makes you think the Chiefs want to pay premium dollar to DK Metcalf? They traded Tyreek Hill. They traded Tyreek Hill because they didn't want to pay premium for a wide receiver. And since then, you've watched them continually either draft wide receivers or get cheap wide receivers who can do everything collectively that they want. Hey, I know DK Metcalf would be fun here. I know it'd be neat to watch and everything, but let's get back to the real world right now. And the fact that the Seahawks, if they're getting rid of him, either something's coming off the field, he's got an injury that they know about and the Chiefs don't, Frank Clark, and you know, like they don't want to pay him, and there's a reason why they don't want to pay him, and it either deals with the first two or there's something else to where they're like, yeah, dude, we don't want this, we're not committing to this as one of our leaders and one of our people in the locker room long term. So if they were willing to trade him, understand there's a reason why. And you should be a little bit more concerned with it than doing cartwheels.
Yeah, I mean, I completely co-sign about everything. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I can see the Chiefs' case for saying, why would you trade for DK Metcalf? I can't build a compelling case about why you're Seattle, why you would trade DK Metcalf. I mean, right now, I know one of the projections has them like $1.8 million over the cap. You don't let go of a guy like DK Metcalf because you're $1.8 million over the cap. I mean, if anything, the only thing the Chiefs, if they acquired DK Metcalf, would have to do the exact same thing that Seattle could do, which is restructure DK Metcalf, give him more money, add some void years on, and they can have all the salary cap space in the world that they need just by doing that with DK Metcalf. The Chiefs would have to do the exact same thing if they traded for him, because I think his contract base salary is like $13 million this year. Chiefs would have players, for the most part, don't have a problem doing that. You know, there was a lot of questions about like Tyreek Hill a few years ago when he supposedly, did not want to restructure his contract that way to free up some salary cap space. But that was because it made no sense for him from a business standpoint. He already, with the way his contract was structured, was going to get a bonus check, a roster bonus check, and it wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to get him any earlier. With DK Metcalf, I mean, you're talking about if Seattle gave him all his $13 million this year that he's due this year right now in a signing bonus and spread it out over the next 3 to 5 years, they'd have all the cap space that they need, and he gets $13 million ahead of schedule. That's a great deal for the player. But also, I mean, there's no guaranteeing that even if the Chiefs were able to make a trade for DK Metcalf, and I think it would take more than next year's first number one pick, because I think if I'm Seattle, I'd say, and then when the Chiefs said something else, and I'd say, and I think that's what it would take. I mean, he's one of the two most important players on their team, and the other one is Geno Smith. So that's what I'm saying. I just don't see that happening on that offense. So, I mean, hey, is it a fun little exercise? I guess, but You could knock me over with a feather, Nick. As a matter of fact, I will. I've reserved streaking through power and light for only when Mizzou wins a team national championship in an NCAA sanctioned sport. But I would come close to it if the Chiefs traded for DK Metcalf, because that's how much I'm convinced that it's not going to happen. It's not even on the drawing board.
I'm just gonna throw this idea out for the suggestion box. If we're gonna keep doing the podcast, let's maybe not do that, because it is associated with a brand that wouldn't be cool with having a report on you doing a criminal act.
I think it would get lost if Mizzou won a national championship, though. I'd get buried deep in the newscast.
I promise you, it won't. I see the comment sections coming after me already. I don't know what it is, Matt. Doesn't matter. Anytime I talk, someone's always got an opinion about it.
You're a realist, Nick. That's what you are. Michael's got it here. Boom. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about realism here. You come to us for realism. It's
always fascinating me. People always want our opinions, but then they want to tear us down as soon as we give them. It's the most fascinating thing in the world.
Hey, if we're here to keep it real. That's why I think the majority of all of you come here, because we're gonna keep it real. We're not gonna tell you pie in the sky, and I'm not knocking anybody who does, but just saying. Sometimes you just got to say, wait a minute, this is not going to happen in a million years. So, Pano, is it pretty sure a lock that Donovan Smith gets re-signed with the status of Wanye and the pot charges? Like I said at the top, I would be very surprised if Wanye Morris gets suspended. I mean, any more players only get fined for this unless there's an extenuating circumstance. So I don't think that's an issue. But Nick, I think we're still at the same spot, right? I mean, I assume Donovan Smith wants to play and he would like to make some money. And neither one of those are available in Kansas City.
Are you asking me? I don't know.
It was kind of a statement with a question at the end.
Okay. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, they'll go through OTAs, see how the two of them do, see where Andy Heck does or doesn't feel comfortable, and then if they need to bring somebody in around minicamp or after minicamp, then then they can. Because I'm pretty sure Donovan's going to be coming back for an event within the next month that may have some shine to it, and then you can go from there. Remember, Matt, we can't say any more from the email we got.
I know, but yes, that's I think that's a good hint that about something that people might suspect is coming up in the next month or so.
I would be surprised if he's not in town to get something that precious and monumental, something that would be known as very, very precious by Gollum.
Precious, my precious. Our fan, not a fan. Well, I guess sometimes we're fans, and we are fans of all of our loyal viewers and listeners. And so Julia Gulia, of course, is a fan favorite here for us, Nick. Blitz pickup was an important component of McKinnon's game. Who do you see stepping into that role?
No idea.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
That's the reality of it. I mean, I wish I could tell you it's going to be this guy on this date. But no, we have no idea, because a lot of them are unproven in pass protection. It's part of the reason they probably brought back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, because his knowledge of the offense, but also his ability to pick up pass pro from time to time. Pacheco does a lot better than he did his rookie year, but he's still work in progress. And then the other guys are just a bunch of question marks right now. So you don't know. That'll be another one that end of July we'll find out.
I mean, that's what, that third running back spot is going to be a pretty good battle, because I think there's, at least 4 different players who could win that job, maybe more. And they're all different flavors. I mean, maybe a guy like Carson Steele makes this team because he's the only running back who can block. And he's a big guy. Maybe Amani Bailey, turns into the bowling ball blocker that he looks like he could be and picks it up. Maybe Clyde shows that, hey, that he's finally ready to sacrifice his body and has picked up the technique, and he's willing to do the things that McKinnon used to do. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I think that job is up in the air. I mean, I'm assuming still that McKinnon's not coming back. I guess it's still possible that Jerick McKinnon could still come back, although they gave his number away. But that doesn't prohibit anything. But you haven't really heard. And I've got no indication from either side that, because even when you talk to people with the Chiefs and they talk about some, unsigned players who are still back, his name is not the one that comes up first. It's usually a name like McCole Hardman that comes up first, and a Donovan Smith that comes up first. But speaking of which, this is another Twitter thing that's popped up here and there, Nick. The Derrick Gore seemed to hint on Twitter that maybe he was returning. Should they bring him back? I was really surprised by this. I know the tweet to which Ozzy is referring to, and I mean, I might interpret it the same way, and I know that, hey, still kicking around and everything. I think I'd be very surprised if Derrick Gore was back with the Chiefs. Am I crazy?
Look, I mean, I got to see how old he is now, because he's been around a while.
He is, I have it up here, 29. And he was with Washington last year with Eric Bieniemy.
When does he turn 30? Is it next year or later this year?
In December. Okay,
so he's
pretty old.
Oh, I know. I remember with the Chargers. Yeah, look, I mean, he was. I'm gonna be blunt again. Like, this is the only way I can be right now. He was slow. He was slow when he was here. You know, you were just hoping he could break some tackles when he was younger, and he didn't really see a ton of playing time when he was here. So I don't know a couple years later how it's gonna be massively improved. If he's here, hey. If they sign him, hey. But I'm not doing cartwheels like, hey, that's what they needed to get back to that three-peat.
Yeah, I mean, running back's the young man's position. I would always bet on the young man. I mean, Jerick McKinnon, as Andy Reid said on repeated occasions, was a dinosaur at that spot.
Yeah, saying that last year before he got hurt and they reduced his snaps.
And I mean, it's a business too. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the next time that I see a running back, especially in Kansas City, because we've seen it elsewhere. I mean, some teams do it and everything, but the Chiefs seem to have put themselves into a full hardcore team that believes that paying running backs is about one of the worst things you can do. And let's face it, from a business standpoint and from a return on investment on the football field standpoint, it generally is. Because even if you've got a stud running back, if you're paying them a lot of money, they're still probably not worth it, because you can get somebody for a tenth of the money that is a lot more than tenth as good. I mean, you might get somebody that's 70% of somebody. Well, if you're paying them a tenth of the money, that's a great return. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco makes a tenth of the money of a guy like Ezekiel Elliott was making at the top of his game. Isaiah Pacheco is not 1/10 as good as Ezekiel Elliott. He's a lot better than that.
Matt, I've got a question for you.
Fire away.
Where are we at on the Dr. Ozzy question count tonight?
We've hit 3 now, Ozzy. So I'm probably
a non-member asking this many questions.
I'm probably going to have to put the kibosh on that one. Well, speaking of which, Sharon's a member, so we're going straight to Sharon here. Late, but thoughts on MVS selling secrets to the Bills? telling secrets to the Bills.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's absolutely that is part of the reason why the Bills signed it. MVS was absolutely for, hey, you know what? This is a guy that can at least maybe tell us a couple of things.
Here's my first thing. Sean McDermott worked for Andy Reid for quite a while. So, like, if he's really at that point in his career where he's already forgotten everything Andy taught him along the way as a coach, then he's got bigger problems than need to spend $1 million and a half dollars, or less than 4.5 million, depending on what's likely to be earned or whatever on that whole thing. MVS, if he wants to tell him that he wasn't able to run efficiently to be able to be on the same page with Mahomes for 2 years, and that he couldn't track the football well, then that's fine. But I mean, at the end of the day, he ran the clear out routes, and that didn't always look like he had a full locked in grasp of the offense to begin with. He may mistakenly tell him things that are wrong.
Well, there's that possibility. I see Bert saying MVS can drop all the passes he wants now. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple of things that he can tell them, and but I wouldn't be surprised if that was, at least part of the Bills' philosophy is that, hey, if all we have to do is buy a plane ticket and pay him some per diem to come in here and maybe tell us a couple of things that Andy's doing differently now, or it gives us one little nugget.
I mean, coach's film is coach's film.
It might be worth it.
Coach's film is coach's film. So you're gonna get a couple of audibles. Okay. Still don't have a pass rush, and you still tore up your team because your window closed last year.
And for the record, now that I am, only like 20 minutes behind schedule here, and I'm trying to do my better job of, going through and looking at the comments and everything. I think Nick, I think you were just being too glass half full, because Luttrell saying that you're a glass half empty guy, for Luttrell, I know is a compliment. So,
all right.
don't think that's a negative thing. That's why people come here, Nick. They come here for the realism.
I thought it was the fellowship.
Well, it's the realism and the fellowship. Oh, right. I was at 7:27, so that's where I'm going back to.
I'm proud of you for knowing the time.
I actually kept track of it that time.
Rushing it, man.
I know, I am. Let's see where. Oh, I know. I have a short answer to this one about signing Alvin Kamara. But
is that another thing floating out there in the world?
Actually, this is the first time I've heard of it. So I don't know. What's your short answer, Nick?
I'm pretty sure he's 29 or 30 years old, and he's really expensive, and he's still on the Saints roster.
That's what I was gonna say. Isn't he still on he's still on the Saints, right? So not technically available, correct? I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I think everybody's assuming all these June 1st cuts.
Yeah, and obviously DK Metcalf will not be a June 1st cut, but
no, he would not be.
Yeah, how bad were Kamara's numbers last year? On the shorthand possibility that he becomes available.
He was either injured or coming off an injury last year. I can't remember. Either way, he's on the back half.
He's got 3 straight seasons of averaging less than 4 yards a carry. So I'm going to say, and that comes back to where the rant I was going on earlier. I mean, the Chiefs have actually established a pretty good reputation for not paying running backs. If they are going to pay running backs that are old, it's going to just be because they're taking a shot in the dark that a veteran like LaShawn McCoy or somebody of that nature has little something left in the tank. However, I think they've also learned that none of them have anything left in the tank. So I'm pretty sure that we are at a point in our careers where that, other than there's a crazy unicorn like Jerick McKinnon that cheaply falls into their lap, that Chiefs just aren't going to pay for a running back. And they're just going to do what I think smart teams around the league do, which is just you get a running back as a young player, a rookie, you run him into the ground for 4 years, and then you move on to the next one, because that, unfortunately, is just how the running back game works these days.
Yep.
Brandon, we kind of answered the question a little bit about Wanye and Kingsley's situation, because we are way too early to know for sure about what they're going to do there. And let's see. More DK Metcalf talk. We covered that rant pretty well. Dr. Ozzy says it's Seth Kaiser's fault, Nick, so there you go. I'll just leave that right there. You're a glass half empty. All right, I'm losing my questions. Nick, anything on your mind while I just continue to go through here, or?
No, not really.
we can discuss this one, since we haven't done this in a couple of weeks, Nick. Creed Bolton Smith Tooney contract situation.
We'll just go through the whole thing. You're gonna discuss with Creed, Bolton, Smith, see what their number is with their reps, how much they want. Agent's probably gonna want somewhere in top 2, top 5 money. See what that would look like. Start trying to work with that in the offseason. What does Bolton's agent want? Where are they looking at in terms of top 5, top 10, top 15? Where are they at range-wise? What are they looking at? I think Bolton's could get done a little bit quicker. Steve Spagnuolo is a huge fan of his. Creed, we'll see on that front how here's a one thing you can actually watch during O-line that you and I can watch during O-line period the next 3 weeks. How Creed's snaps are, how those do, if he's there.
There you go.
So that'll be something I'll watch. I'll add to the list. And then Trey Smith, you're going to see what his reps think, and I got a feeling that's going to be at $20 million per year minimum. So you're going to have to decide if you want to pay that. And between the three of them, how much of them can you pay? Can you pay all of them? Because that money that's available right now on the salary cap, you're honestly keeping to potentially carry over into next year to be able to afford some of these guys on the salary cap. So that's why that money's still there, even though people keep wanting them to sign everybody or trade for somebody. Part of that's so that they can retain those guys next year. And with Joe Thuney, I mean, we'll see how he is when he comes back from his injury, but Joe's kind of near the end of his career in terms of effectiveness, and you slowly, steadily see his strength start to slowly diminish year by year since the Chiefs signed him. So, I mean, we'll see what happens after this pec injury, if he can get back to where he was beforehand, or if that's something that just kind of ended up taking its toll on him.
Yeah, I'm of the same philosophy. I mean, I think Trey Smith is just absolutely one of the greatest Chiefs that there is. I mean, he's absolutely somebody you want representing you in the community. He's been a good player for you. I think his best football remains ahead of him. I think he's also going to be a $20 million a year player, and he's going to be the most expensive of the group to keep. Joe Thuney, I mean, he is going to be, I keep wanting to age him a year. He's going to be 33 next year. He turns 33 next year in the season. It's going to be up there miles wise. So, you know, and he's got that $27 million, $26.9 million cap number next year. So you can certainly save some money. I mean, if he's willing to come back on a cheaper deal and stick around, I mean, I think you'd love to have the experience. It's going to be questioned, you know, how quickly he comes back and what he comes back with that pectoral injury. Pec injuries post 30 is a scary thing to me from a number standpoint, but if anybody can do it, to me, it's the Terminator. So I call him the Terminator for a reason, Nick, because he has been sent from the future to protect quarterbacks. He's done a pretty good job of that too. So we'll see what happens. Your final time for the night, Nick. Your mileage may vary, but
it won't be the final time. You still got another one in you.
Creed and Nick are actually going to be the cheapest to keep. So I think there's a pretty good chance that the Chiefs will find a way to keep them. I mean, even if you can make Creed Humphrey the highest paid center in the league, and he's still going to make less money than Trey Smith will. It's just the way the market's going. And you could make Nick Bolton the highest paid middle linebacker in the league, maybe the second highest paid middle linebacker in the league, and he'd still be cheaper than Creed Humphrey. So I think he's going to still be around. So it's just the nature of those positions. So I think they got the best chances to keep those two guys. The other two, we'll see. But the fact that the Chiefs drafted 2 interior linemen this year tells you a lot about what they think. They think they need an interior lineman next year.
I think they're definitely going to need one.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't look at the Chiefs draft this year and not say to yourself, okay, they're losing at least one of those guys, or at least the Chiefs believe they're losing one of those guys, because you don't draft a guy to replace somebody if you don't think you need to replace him. But let's see. Yeah, Red Race, we did talk a little bit about Rashid Rice, or at least I did, about the top of the show. I don't know if, Nick, you have any thoughts on the Rashid Rice developments of the last 24 hours or anything you want to add. You certainly have the freedom to do so.
I saw the guy doesn't want to press charges or something, and that's where they're at. So,
that is pretty much how we can sum it up right there.
Okay, so they investigated it. It's done. They're all moving on. It sounds like
not done. WFAA says that the police are still investigating, but the guy has signed a non-prosecution affidavit. So I guess if they decide to move forward, they would be doing so without his assistance. He has now said that it was a misunderstanding. So unless there's some compelling evidence to suggest that his affidavit is incorrect, seems like it would be pretty hard for the police and the prosecution to move forward. But I've seen enough Law and Order, Nick, and everything's not over until it's over.
All right.
Brandon, what is your opinion on Brian Cook? Will he be back to pre-injury form?
I don't know. We'll find out. Find out next Sunday on 41 as a Mic when we actually get a chance to watch him.
That is true. We will find out. I'm hoping he's going to be ready to go. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's just going through drills at this point, but I'm interested to see. And you know what? I was going to bring up one of the comments, Nick, because it reinforced what I said earlier. because apparently you only read the negative comments. Nick is the man. I might get a T-shirt for you that says that now.
Thank you.
Justin, our burner account, wants to know, did I steal his catchphrase? Am I crazy? I've said it 3 times tonight. Maybe I have. I mean, if you've posted it, Justin, it's entirely possible that maybe I have stolen it from you. And since you are a burner account, I mean, I think that's fair game, right? So
I got nothing.
I did not find out, Nick. Are you going to the grocery store next, or did you go before the show?
No, I went before the show.
Okay.
I waited for the storm to pass. I was actually going to go during when the storm started. I was like, nope, that sounds like there might be a little. That's very heavy rain, if not hail. I'm going to wait a minute.
You greatly enjoyed, as I did, the tornado sirens going off about an hour after the storm ended.
Look, I mean, you can never be too prepared. Okay, we at least know the sirens still work. That's good. So I'm going to take the positives where I can get them. I was able to hear them. You were able to hear them. So I feel like, things are on the up and up.
There you go. Member Matt Francis with good question here, because, sometimes we gloss over some of these things that, maybe, but why do certain guys get cut after June 1? Do you want to explain it, Nick?
Matt, you go for it, man. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy how the mileage may vary.
I'll try not to end up with a sentence that ends that way, or saying that am I crazy? But Matt, the NFL has a contractual rule that after June 1st, for players that have more than 1 year remaining on their contract, June 1st is the deadline for how the remaining money on their contract gets prorated. So, for instance, if the Chiefs were to release a player right now who has 2 years left on their contract, and they released them today, then that money would immediately, all the remaining money on that contract is guaranteed and through it would automatically hit their salary cap right now. It would essentially be considered paid right now. If they release them after June 1st, then they can split that money between what is due now, which would be this year's salary, whatever's guaranteed, and then the rest of it would hit on the next year's cap. So if they had 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, however many is left, the 2024 salary cap, salary money that was guaranteed would hit this year. Everything else that was guaranteed would hit in the 2025 salary cap. It's just a way that when you release a player that you can split their money into 2 different years. Now, you hear teams releasing players before June 1 with a pre-June 1 designation. That allows teams to let a player get released as early as March, but they have to continue to keep that money on the salary cap until June 1. So it's really just the player benefit for the player to be able to hit free agency earlier. Teams can kind of do them a little solid a little bit. It doesn't necessarily give the salary team any relief at all until June 1, but at least gives the player a chance to test the market, go out and find a new home without having to wait until June. I mean, they did that because, there was a time when teams in the early days of the salary cap were having to wait until June 1 to release players so they would get that salary cap benefit. And it really was a disadvantage to the players. So now they allow them to release them early. Some teams, do end up still waiting until after June 1. It's a lot more common now for players to just go ahead and be a June 1 cut. There's usually, if it's a player that gets cut after June 1, it's because circumstances have changed. For instance, the team has drafted a player, maybe they've signed another free agent, they've acquired somebody else that has changed the equation. Sometimes an injury can get involved too, but that's usually what happens. So, there can still be some June 1 cuts. Looks like there probably will be for some salary cap purposes this year. That's always the case, but a lot of them get cut before that. But that's the reason why June 1 is a magical date, because that's the date by which a team can spread the cap hit for a player that has more than 1 year left in their contract over multiple seasons ahead. So that's the magic of June 1. And did I leave anything out, Nick?
Man, I thought you did a great job.
Oh, sometimes, Nick, a blind squirrel finds an acorn.
Well, you found a whole bunch of them.
Jackie Moon asks, does it matter KC has historically not paid centers? I mean, I get why people have that argument, but, one, we don't really know about what Brett Veach's philosophy is on it. I'd say two, they haven't had a center like Creed Humphrey in a long time. Maybe not ever. I mean, at least in the free agency era.
Yeah, I'm going to name off the 3 centers that they've had over time that have been great since Carl was here. I'm going to go with that.
There you go.
Tim Grunhard.
Yes.
And again, that position didn't get paid top dollar in that era.
Nope.
So that was never going to be a factor.
Yep.
The next one would be Casey Wegman in the early 2000s, whenever he was here under Dick Vermeil era. Again, centers weren't getting paid an insane amount of money.
Yep.
I think the first center that got paid really big money was Alex Mack back in that 2012, 2014 range with the Cleveland Browns. Whenever he left to go with the Falcons, Falcons had to pay him top dollar to hit the market and really kind of start what became centers getting paid. So between that time until probably now is when you got the next guy in line with Creed Humphrey. In terms of the Chiefs eras from 1989 till now, those are probably your 3 best centers you've had during that time. And Creed's really probably the biggest of the bunch in terms of actually having a chance to get paid a pretty good sum during an era when they're paying offensive linemen at all positions, not just left tackle.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, there's 2 others I would throw in there, and at least that conversation with Rodney Hudson and Mitch Morse, both very good centers. But when the Chiefs let Rodney Hudson walk, it was the same year they drafted Mitch Morse, and Mitch Morse was kind of look ahead. I mean, this was a guy that they drafted to move to center because he was a tackle in college, but that was their intention, was to draft him and move him there. Did the Chiefs have that as the intention when they let Rodney Hudson walk? I mean, for all intents and purposes, it may very well have been the plan. I've never got a chance to ask the powers that be at that time. I'm hoping to get to do that one day, but maybe if John Dorsey will ever sit down with me. But I'd like to know that, because I mean, that was a pretty good plan. I mean, you go from, because Rodney Hudson ended up making, gosh, he made $13 million. I'm looking at it now. That first year in Oakland at the time, I guess. And then you come in and you start paying Mitch Morse a rookie contract, and he was a really good center. So I don't think you lost anything there.
But you know the other 2 key components with both of them?
Lay it on me.
Rodney Hudson had broken his leg the year before, and he wasn't even close to 70%. And I still remember asking him in the locker room multiple times. I'm like, hey, because I could see it in coach's film, he wasn't bending the same way, and it wasn't the same. It was a pretty gruesome leg injury that he had back then. And I remember asking him over, and he was like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, okay. Touched a nerve on that one. Not going to ask that one again, but that gives me my answer. Nope. But he was getting ready to hit contract year that year. So, I mean, he played through, even if he did have anything, he played through all that. And then he moved on to the Raiders. And then with Mitch, if you remember, Mitch broke his foot, and he had a screw put in that foot, and it didn't bend as well as it did before that happened. And you could see it sometimes when he'd be dry blocking, or when he would, some that would take power and straight ahead and have to flex the foot a certain way. And when that happened, he didn't have the same driving force. And don't get me wrong, Mitch was an awesome guy and always enjoyed chatting with him. And he's a great dude, rooting him well down in Jacksonville with what he's, with him going down there now and everything. But yeah, in terms of those guys, those guys both had injury question marks, like right a year before free agency, that really, I think the Chiefs were kind of like, yeah, we don't, you may want this dollar amount, but we know the injury here and here on both these situations. And they may not feel comfortable with them, but they still ended up, going to get money elsewhere. And then Rodney actually almost came back here. I believe that year that they drafted Creed.
Yeah, I think you're correct. That was a possibility.
So I know for sure is a possibility. they've got some tech.
This gives you a little bit of indication about just how the market has exploded, Nick. I'm looking at it right now. During his 4 years in Kansas City, Hudson earned $3.5 million under his rookie contract.
Yep, out of Florida State. Yep.
Yeah. He's earned $82.4 million in his career. So he's earned over $79 million since in his career since he left Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
That's about $10 million a year. And I mean, Creed's going to make more than that. I mean, Creed should make more than that. But it tells you how the position has exploded, for sure. But yeah, I mean, and that's the crazy thing. I mean, we were talking about earlier is that, it's crazy to me that Creed, who I think as far as you grade them by position, is clearly the best at his position of all three of those rookies from that year, from Trey and Nick. But he isn't going to make as much money as Trey. I mean, it's just the nature of the position. And it's really odd. I mean, maybe this is the year that the position goes crazy. I mean, maybe somebody out there decides to offer Creed Humphrey $20 million a year. I mean, it's possible.
So just so we have this out here, in terms of average per year right now, Jason Kelce was at the top at 14.2.
That was a 1-year deal for 14.2.
And
that was a retirement tax.
Right. And Frank Ragnow underneath was at 13.5. So if you're looking at Creed right now, you're probably looking at that average. The most a center has overall in terms of overall contract value, $62.5 million for Corey Linsley, just retired with the Chargers. Another guy that the Chiefs were potentially looking at the time when they drafted Creed. In terms of fully guarantees, Frank Ragnow's still at the top at 27.9. So you're probably looking in that ballpark of you're 13.5 to maybe 15 potentially. Fully guarantees 27. Total guarantees for Frank is 42. So that's kind of if you're looking in terms of top, Creed's considered one of the top 2, top 3 guys. So you're going to have to be in that ballpark more than likely before he hits the market.
Yeah. And I mean, and that would be to make him the highest paid. I mean, Trey Smith could be tied for he could be a top 10 paid guard and still be making more money than that by a couple of million. I mean, the 10th highest paid guard right now, the top 11 are making 16 million minimum. So 20 at this point would only make it the 3rd highest paid guard per year.
Because at the left guard spot, the top paid average per year right now is Landon Dickerson.
Yep.
At $21 million a year, $50 million guaranteed total. At the right guard spot, you're looking at the top guy is Chris Lindstrom, the Falcons, 20.5, 62.7 guaranteed. But you and I both know Trey hits the market, that's going to be in the ballpark of what he's going to get from somebody.
It is indeed. Oh, Luttrell has a question I love. Oh, Nick, what is the one question that you wish we would ask you?
I don't have one, Matt. I don't have one that I wish you would ask me.
You don't have one?
No, I just go with what people ask.
So you only have a list of questions you don't want to be asked.
No, okay. So here's how the road we're gonna go before we start painting a bad picture here. All right, let's put some happy trees in here, Bob Ross. No, but I guess when it gets repetitive week after week, that's whenever it kind of, I kind of feel like I turned into Andy Reid when he kept getting asked at OTAs a handful of years ago about, why this person missed and that person missed type of thing. I totally get it too, but it's just at the end of the day, I mean, O-line, D-line, we're going to find out in July. And we'll see what happens. Like when guys get on the field, how they come back from injury, how they do this, how they do that.
I think I have the answer though.
Go for it.
Which is that your least favorite questions, as we can establish, and I think we would all agree, are just simply the routine questions that get asked repeatedly, which would make me think that the question you wish we would ask you would be a question that is not asked very often, if at all, but is also realistic. Because obviously, you've probably never been asked, should the Chiefs trade for Tua? But you would also have a rant about that question because why would the Chiefs trade for Tua?
I wouldn't have a rant the first time. I'd be like, no, it's not happening.
just quietly the first time.
It's when it's the fifth or sixth time. I'm like, all right. And then sometimes you got to be forceful because, like, if you do, then people are like, all right, yeah, no, don't ask him that question again.
Okay, I actually now this is a question I do want to kind of know the answer to. Nick, what are you having for breakfast this week? Also, when does the magic really start in the season? Great questions.
Matt already knows. I was at Homegrown yesterday for my breakfast in Liberty. Got that. The rosemary potatoes are delightful. The way they're cut up. I get the scrambled eggs with them. I get the ham and sausage. Then they had two blueberry pancakes. I just realized now saying that I ruined it, but when I went to the grocery store, I didn't get proper pancake syrup. I still have the Cinnabon one in there, which had a cinnamon taste to it and it wrecked the blueberry pancakes. So I'm gonna have to, I'm gonna have to reevaluate my week on that one. So I will not be pairing those two together anymore. I found out that was this one, but they have freshly squeezed orange juice.
Yes, they do,
and it's really good. Really
good.
But if you buy it to go, it's like $6 right now. Very expensive. But man, you do not forget it the rest of the day. When you've had freshly squeezed orange juice, you do not forget it. At least I didn't.
So when did this magic really start in the season?
Oh yeah, right.
The moment that orange juice arrives, that's when the magic starts.
I mean, look, well, I don't know. You just once the season starts, and if you're covering it and you're building shows throughout the week on it, like in some ways it's kind of like Groundhog's Day, but it's not. To where you get used to it, you get in a routine and everything, and then you have your like whenever the Chiefs play a game on Sunday or Monday, when they play on Sunday, life's a lot easier because it gets into a nice routine on a regular basis. So you have time to look over the coach's film, then tweet that stuff out, then answer everybody's questions, whatever they may be, and then you have the podcast that you do at this time, and then Q&A at this time, and you kind of get into that week's routine and everything. And then for me, with what I do show wise throughout the week, what we have sponsored, the segments we have sponsored that we do throughout the week, then you get into that routine. But once you get in all that, then you add in high school football, then you add in college football. So you're keeping tabs on 3 different levels of football and what the Royals may be doing, depending on how they're doing that type of year, how Sporting's doing, how Current's doing. So, for me personally, hey, football's fun and everything, but I'm not going to pretend I don't enjoy the break right now of not having every day dedicated to football from probably July until the NFL draft.
Yeah, I had Pat Strathman from down in Wichita asked me on the radio today if the OTAs was the most boring part of the NFL season. And I was trying to come up with, because it's not boring to me. I really enjoy OTAs. But then I started just like thinking, okay, well, what is, as far as just like when there's actually football going on, because you could certainly say the most boring day might be, I don't know, I can't even think of a good day. Maybe July 2nd might be a really boring day, because talk about just the middle of the dead period. And unless, nothing happens on July 2nd. Even the Chiefs, when they do something crazy, like fire their general manager, they did that in late June. So, it's not July 2nd. Everybody's on vacation in early July. So nothing happens then. But man, I will say this, and this is not answering the question when the magic starts, but maybe it's just when the magic, hits its low. I still think the last few days of training camp are harder than OTAs, because no one wants to be in camp anymore. It's not a knock against St. Joe, anything of that nature. It's just that the players have all been in dorms for 3 weeks. Me, I've been making the trip, 45-minute drive every day for 3 weeks. Everybody's been doing everything for 3 weeks. It is Groundhog Day. By the end of training camp, you do not know what day. I usually don't know what day it is about 3 days into training camp. It's been sometimes 15 minutes when I wake up in the morning before I remember what day it is. And even then, I need something to remind me. So, it really becomes routine. But man, if there is like one of the last 3 days of training camp after the preseason game that you played, and then you're coming back for like 3 more days of camp, and it's 85 degrees and there's 300 people there because school has started. That's hard to get up for, Nick.
No, that is the fun time of training camp in my book, is just because you bring up a really good point. It really does. After that first preseason game airs, that's when you slowly see the crowd start to thin at training camp. Like the first open day to the public, that thing is packed. First family fun day, that thing is packed. And then like it is packed on a regular basis every weekend at minimum. But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of people. And then once that first preseason game hits, that place turns into a ghost town, man. Like there might be some diehards there. There might be some people that finally get a chance to come up that hadn't been able to beforehand. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. Once and then when you really know camp is almost near the end is when they bring those kids on the buses from daycare each year. You know what I'm saying? They all have the same shirt and everything. And you just got a group of kids just right near us and everything every single year for the past decade now, it feels like, at minimum. And they're all trying to catch the footballs whenever they get, when they get kicked through the field goal post, and then you just have kids just screaming and chanting random things, and like that's when you're like, all right, if the kids are here, there's about 2 or 3 days left in training camp. It's one of those training camp checkpoints, Matt.
It is a training point checkpoint. You are for sure about that. All right, now that I've brought the conversation down to a complete halt, we can go lightning round. I don't know if we have enough questions left for lightning round, but
it'll be fast.
The NFL supposedly considering doing optical tracking, getting rid of the old chain gang for first downs. Thoughts?
We'll see how it works out. Like, I mean, I'm not against it. We'll see if it's effective, if there's any chip malfunctions or anything like that, and go from there.
I mean, it can't be worse than what they currently do. And this is my own little small mini rant here and everything, because when they started bringing this up again, I'm like, the funny thing is that even though they're really good at it, I'm not saying that they're not, but there is no consideration whatsoever. Whenever there's a close first down, anything like that, everybody just focuses on the chain and the spot and everything of that nature. You know what no one ever considers and goes back to, Nick? They don't go back to the spot of the first down and making sure that, one, the ball got placed at the right spot, that the chain's at the right spot, that when the chain comes into the middle of the field, that it's at the right spot. No one cares. I mean, you could go back and look, and I would hazard to guess that in any given game, when you're looking back at the chains and figuring out where they were spotted and where the sticks were placed and everything, were they at the same spot that the ref actually marked the ball? I mean, one, just by human error alone, you would say no, that it's just not correct. So, I mean, but nobody ever goes back to say, wait a minute, the Chiefs were 6 inches short, but go back and look at first down and you'll see that on first down, the chains got placed in the wrong place by 8 inches. No one cares. So I figure they got a freaking chip in the freaking ball, Nick. They know exactly where the ball is on the field. And then when they set it down, they know exactly where that is. They can figure it out much better with the chip in the ball than the human eye can. So that's all I got.
You didn't say your catchphrase.
I did not. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to restrict myself and hold myself back to just important moments in time. Speaking of important moments in time, Missouri took in the Super Regionals this weekend. Can Mizzou softball make it to Oklahoma City?
I don't know, Matt. I don't know. The reason I say that is because you've got you've got an extra player right now. And Hayes, who can actually hit the ball over the fence as well. So between her and then Maddie Gallagher, she's not busy smashing watermelon, she's smashing baseballs into the gap. And then Jenna Laird. They now have they have a third person that is able to help them out. But I'll be curious to see how they do their lineup for this week against Duke and everything. And then the rock star pitcher that you asked the question about on Sunday Soundoff. For people that didn't see my tweet, Saturday they had an elimination game after they lost to Omaha on Friday. On Saturday, she pitched both games on Saturday against Indiana and Washington. Didn't obviously pitch the whole game, but did all that. And then she pitched both games against Omaha on Sunday. And if I remember correctly, she had like 300 somewhere more than 340 pitches in 27 hours time.
Yeah.
Like she pitched in 4 games in less than 20. It might have been less than 24 hours. I'm gonna say 27 because I need to count the end because they started that first game at 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock against Indiana. No, it's 3:30. It was 3:30 against Indiana on Saturday. Then they had the Washington game at 7. Then she pitched on Sunday against Omaha. Then she pitched again 35 minutes later when the game ended. So yeah, she had more than 340, somewhere between 340, 360 pitches. And in the final game, when her team needed her the most, she had 15 strikeouts in that game, even though she'd already pitched 3 games before. That in itself is insane. So I hate to say it, but they need her to have a dominant performance, and they need those 3 that we talked about with Laird, Gallagher, and Hayes to really kind of carry them offensively.
I'm trying to remember because, and not only that, but I think was it just 9 innings or 10 innings? I can't remember. It went into extra innings in the final game, too. Which
9, yeah.
So 15 strikeouts in 9 innings and throwing a shutout in the 4th game that she pitched that weekend. That's what's absolutely amazing to me. And Alex Honnold also has been just red hot here at the end of the season. It had a great, a regional last weekend. So, hey, they got 4 batters at the top. But I tell you what, I mean, I wish, since Ned Yost was in town last weekend, I really wish that he could have gotten over to Columbia and talked to Larissa Anderson, because I love Lauren Krings. I mean, Lauren can pitch as many innings as she wants to. She can get the ball from me anytime. But just talk about, using a little HDH philosophy. Let Lauren let it go for 4 or 5 innings, whatever she's got. Just let her fire for as long as she needs to. Bring in Marissa McCann for an inning or 2, just middle relief, absolutely gold. And then bring in Taylor Pennell to shut everything down. She's got a saves record at 14 saves on the season. I mean, that could just be your little Mizzou HDH right there. Just little KMP. That's what I'm calling for.
I thought you were going to talk about you wanted Ned down there so you could talk about tomatoes. Did you hear that soundbite?
I did hear that soundbite, and of course I had to. I texted in to Jason Anderson on 810 because I had just been on the show Friday afternoon when they aired the clip about Ned talking about tomatoes, and I had to text in. I'm like, okay, so players are tomatoes, but there's no third base tree.
Touche, sir.
Speaking of players being tomatoes and third base trees, Bert asking, why won't Veach give Mahomes a true X receiver at 6'4", 230? Last true X Chiefs had was Sammy Watkins when he was healthy. I mean, I think the short answer to me, Bert, is that, you know what? Players are not tomatoes and they don't grow on trees, and you just can't go find the one you want sometimes.
It's not going to show.
It's disappeared.
Yeah. That photo was the 3 Super Bowl trophies. It's 2019. I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, Brett Veach. I'm gonna be 100% real here. Brett Veach has helped bring 3 Lombardi trophies here. He brought you a franchise quarterback, and he continually finds guys who can at minimum do well in their rookie contracts, even if they move on, and then find somebody to replace them. Now, is there other people involved in all this making this happen? Yeah, but I'm just telling you right now. I don't know what else you want from Brett Veach. 3 Super Bowls. 3. And Matt, if I had time, I'd go get all 3 of them that I have, and then the championship belt.
I mean, you go to the county fair, and there's only one winner. There's only one. And so you can't have 32 people go to the county fair and everybody gets the best tomato. I mean, sometimes, and if you know what, if you got the 25th best tomato, and then you got maybe the 36th best tomato, you know what? You're probably in better shape than the team that's got the first best tomato, and their next one is maybe the 96th best tomato. That's all I'm saying. So it's not always about the best tomato, Bert. It's about all the tomatoes, and then it's about your other vegetables that you got around them, because you may not have the best and the biggest tomato, but you got the biggest and best watermelon. I mean,
I got something for you, Matt.
Although I guess the offensive line would be better if it's watermelon.
Grow tomato plants, right? So I plant all my tomatoes, and I'll sit out there and I weed every day, and I water them, and I take care of them, and I make sure that they're all doing fine, and make sure that they've got enough fertilizer. But no matter how hard I try, I can't walk out there in my garden and start screaming at the tomatoes. I want tomatoes now. Let's go. I want them now. Come on, let's grow. I want tomatoes now. No, the tomatoes are going to be tomatoes when they're tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way with players.
Yeah, remember that, Matt. Tomatoes are going to be tomatoes when they're going to be tomatoes.
But you gotta grow them and you gotta feed them. You gotta weed them. You gotta take care of them. Lateral. I mean, I need to during the off season. Not that there's a period of time over the next few weeks before we get into the regular season for sure into training camp. I need to work on some graphics packages and some sound effects and everything because yes, we will. I know exactly the sound effect that I want. I know exactly how to pull this off. We can absolutely. I just need a klaxon that blares, and I know exactly which one I want for whenever one of Nick's favorite questions gets asked. So
sounds like a lot of work that I don't want to be involved in.
You don't have to be. That is all on me. You don't have any part of it.
I've got enough work on my plate in general.
Exactly. I know we hit. I feel like we hit rock bottom when Mark had to start giving out the Royal scores. So apologize for that, but. I saw that the Royals are now up 10-3 in the top of the 8th. So there you go. Well, I was going to say last call, Nick, but we don't have any more questions in the queue. So, I mean, if anybody wants to get one more last one in, you can feel free for it. But we got a lot of people hungry for breakfast right now.
You got one at 8:10 there.
Did I miss one at 8:10?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, there we go. From Hano. Out there in Hawaii. I love it. Great to have you from Hawaii. Are you a radio or a TV show analyst?
I'm not. I'm a sports producer. That means I put the shows together. So what a sports producer does, a sports producer, in my case, helps put the schedule together for the week to help assist the sports director, Mick Schaefer, and then help let the reporters see what's available to be able to go cover for the week and try to be able to plan ahead efficiently and effectively throughout the week about how we're going to differentiate our coverage from everybody else in town. And then also, for example, tomorrow, as Matt knows, I will be out at Chiefs OTAs helping do the photog work and then observing afterwards, watching the practice of the part that we can't necessarily shoot and be able to get evaluations on that for the podcast that Matt and I do together where we do that. So I guess you could consider that sort of radio if you want. Occasionally 8:10 will contact me and be like, hey, do you want to do a radio hit? And I'm like, okay. And then it just depends what time in the morning they want to do it, because normally I'm coming off Sunday sound off on a Sunday night whenever we do that. But also I help as sports producer. I edit a lot of content for us, help stack a show. So that means build a show together, what the roadmap is, and be able to put commands in there so the directors and everybody knows what they need to execute as well. And then transcribe some stuff for the closed captioning. So whenever we have a soundbite on there and you put in the runtime, how long the soundbite is, you put in the out cue so the director knows when the soundbite's about ready to wrap up so they can get ready to hit the next thing for their transition or whatever they may do. So there's all that stuff. And there's a handful of other things that I'm missing right now, but there's a lot of things to do as a sports producer.
And given, my extensive, work in 3 months in television during my days at the University of Missouri School of Journalism and with my major in broadcasting, and for the 3 months that they allowed me to work at Channel 8 before banishing me back to radio where I have a face for, I can say that, the producers are the ones that make everything go. If there were not the producers at TV stations, Nick will never say this, but I can say this, without the producers, every day of TV news would just be a blank screen, because the cats and dogs running around doing all the reporting and the anchoring and everything like that could never, ever get anything off on time without producers on top of them making sure that everything gets done. And two, Nick is the best in the business.
But I will say that Mick is more than capable of stacking his own show and being able to do all that and edit all that. I've watched him do it time and time again. McKenzie's can do it. Aaron can do it.
That's no knock against them.
I'm just making sure that that's out there in the universe, that they're multi-talented, multi-versatile as well.
but you elevate everyone around you. You are the point guard.
I just take some stuff off everybody's plate so that
And-
we can crush it.
And I as you know, I'm the outsider, of course, you know, so I probably make a bad analogy, but you are the point guard. You're the one that makes everybody around you better.
If that's what that, I don't know. I don't know what, I mean, I don't know. I just go find the rebound, get it, and distribute it where it needs to go. Whether it's a power forward or center, I don't know. If I have to set a pick, that's fine. But no, I'm not up there shooting it, making it rain. I'm there making sure somebody else can make it rain.
Not really a question, but I think a way to go out, Nick. Is it way too early for keys to winning against the Ravens and Bengals?
Last call. I
think that's your answer right there.
No, I mean, we'll see what happens injury wise, because I mean, like the Ravens, with the Ravens, I'm curious to see what their defense looks like in the preseason. I'm curious to see, with all the losses they've had, how they're gonna do. With McDonald now in Seattle, you know, being the coach of DK Metcalf for definitely this year. What happens there? But then with the Bengals, I mean, you know, you're getting Joe Burrow early. We'll see what happens with T. Higgins, and you know, if he's around and everything. So I don't know. I'm curious to see. Like last year, that was everybody's best chance. That was everybody's best chance to really knock the Chiefs off their perch, and they still couldn't do it. And if the Chiefs are able to build on what they did last year in the playoffs, that's a problem for the league. That's a really big problem for the rest of the league.
Yes, I mean, obviously you need to have some things go your way and good luck, but the fact that the Chiefs won a Super Bowl during what was not their A+ year is a bad sign for everybody. And like Kathy said, I mean, you are Stockton to McShafer's Malone. There is no doubt about that.
I'm just gonna trust
it, unless you want to be Malone and he's Stockton. I mean, it's your choice.
I don't know. I mean, Dennis Rodman was a pretty talented guy on the Bulls. I just happened to watch a Dennis Rodman story last night. That's why I thought of it. Whenever Dennis Rodman went against Shaquille O'Neal, and they were showing that at one point. I don't know. I thought that was pretty. Just some of the stories. Sorry, I'm thinking of some of the stories about Rodman and during the time whenever he kept flying to Vegas from when they were playing the Utah Jazz and everything, kept flying back and forth. So I get to see some of the stories last night and something I was watching, and it just, I don't know, it was just funny. I just kept flying back to Vegas, and Phil Jackson was not a fan of all that going on at that time. And I remember watching that NBA Finals. So I mean, I'm remembering all that stuff during the time, not realizing any of that stuff's happening.
Can you think about that era in particular? I mean, there were things that, I mean, every generation's like this to a little bit, but man, you think about the stuff that the players did in the 90s and Rodman and those Bulls teams and Jordan. They did that today with social media. Well, one, I don't think they would, but two, it would be entertaining.
They couldn't now because people would be taking photos of them walking or video of them walking in and out of wherever they'd be in Vegas at that time or wherever they'd be going and everything. Yeah, people track everything now, so they could not do that.
Yeah, now I'm having visions of Travis Kelce going to Vegas in the middle of the week before a playoff game and everybody melting down.
But that is not happening. That's a hypothetical situation. That is not Matt reporting anything. Please don't think that.
That was just me, my flight of fancy imagination. Luttrell wanted to know when I was at Channel 8 and KOMU in Columbia. Yeah. I never announced a school closing, Luttrell, but I did cover, and this would have been in the magical fall of 1994. So when my heyday at Channel 8, like I said before, I got sent back to the radio side where I was much more well-suited because I had a face for radio. But I did do my best story at Channel 8 was on Halloween and going out and covering the trick-or-treaters. I had some great B-roll of this little kid in the shark costume. So if anybody out there, in 1994 went out as a shark for Halloween, you were probably in my package. And if I ever get that digitized, that would be a magical opportunity to reunite with that kid. I mean, that was 30 years ago, Nick. So the anniversary's coming up. So
Well, Matt, asking you shall receive. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't me. I couldn't sell that too long. I didn't want to get people's hopes up and be like, I was that kid. Kid.
That was my best story. That was the one I did that I liked the most. My producer, my Nick Jacobs that kid was Nick Jacobs.
Oh boy.
The kid was not Nick Jacobs, but that would have been awesome if it was.
It was not.
I thought was my best story. My producer got mad at me because my stand-up that I shot with that, I wore a Homer Simpson mask. And she did not have a problem with me wearing the Homer Simpson mask. She just wanted to she wanted to see my face. So she's like, you should have, taken off the mask before the end and introducing yourself. But I wore the mask the entire time. So I did get critiqued on that. The story I did that got the most attention, however, was the professor at the University of Missouri who did a study on goldfish and found out that the more colorful the male goldfish, the more partners he attracted. And his research also found that lesser colorful goldfish hung out with more attractive male goldfish because they then knew that they would be able to get the female goldfish that goldfish rejected. That got promoted, and partly because, admittedly, this title of the story was Sex, Guppies, and Videotape, but that got promoted every single segment news break. Every commercial break that night. So everybody saw the promos about 15 times before that story aired. I think that's mostly why it got so much attention, but it was not my best work, but that's the one that people remember the most.
Which is funny because goldfish have short memories, right?
It is, really. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, Brad. And admittedly, the professor, after I did the interview and the camera was off and everything, he did tell me that he did the study mostly because he thought it might get him on Letterman. So
everybody's got an angle, man.
Hey, you know what? Today, mostly you're just doing research to try and see if you can get your stories on Good Morning America, or the Today Show. So
that is not why I tweet. I promise you.
That is not why we do anything, folks. We do this for you because we enjoy doing this, and we hope you enjoy it half as much as we do.
And if Good Morning America contacted me, I'd be like, well, one, I work at an NBC affiliate, and two, I'm not getting up that early, so thank you. Bye.
Why I quickly corrected myself to the Today Show.
That one I may be required to do. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, everybody, I know we asked you to stick around for this thing way too long. So thank you very much once again for joining us, Nick. Thank you once again for stepping in and sitting out with me for way too long. We've got 41 is the mic coming up on Sunday, and we will be breaking down the first day of OTAs, telling you what we saw, anything that was interesting said by the players and Andy Reid on Wednesday. So got a lot to look forward to. We'll be back next Tuesday. I'll have a video from all of the press conferences as well on Wednesday on the Chiefs Digest YouTube channel. So you'll have that coming your way. Anything other special, I'll also have for our members, I'll be posting some photos and videos from practice tomorrow as well. So you got that coming to you that will be exclusively just for our members. So for those of you who have a membership, you will get that on your feeds tomorrow sometime. You get the press conferences early. The photos will probably take, and the B-roll, the videos and practice will be a little bit longer, but you'll get those sometime tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. So unless you got anything to add, Nick?
I will not be giving any of my OTA thoughts out on Twitter. You'll have to wait till 41 is the mic on Sunday and download it to hear them.
There you go. I might give some of my observations in the notebook on Wednesday, but you'll have to go to ChiefsDigest.com to get them. So.
And I will go there to find them.
There you go. Appreciate everybody. Have a great week, and we will see you again on Sunday for 41 is the mic. Take care, everybody. Have a great week.